It was a brand almost flatlining at minus 30% EBITDA, clocking a revenue of almost 500 crores, EBITDA of close to 20%, and you pulled off this feat post that phase.
The biggest change for us was the mindset. So I still remember around 2020, 2021, when we consciously took a call that bottom line cannot be ignored anymore. Do not fall into the trap of thinking growth and bottom line are mutually exclusive. I don't think consumers consume categories, they consume consumption occasions. Any brand or brands that grow with time, one thing is common is they're very consistent on what they stand for and what they deliver to the consumers. Do not fall in love with your own forecast because forecasts are always bullish. TAM is not a number to be put on a spreadsheet. It's how many consumption occasions can your product actually cater to.
Welcome, Ankur, to Brick by Brick. The topic for this episode is the Epigamia comeback story. Let me start with the numbers, and it's just staggering what you've achieved in the last 3 years, clocking a revenue of almost 500 crores, EBITDA of close to 20%, and growing over 50% year on year. We checked the insurgent brands that we track at DIGCP, and this is truly one of a kind. So congrats on the fantastic recent performance. And what makes it even more incredible is what happened before this phenomenal phase. 3 years back, it was a brand almost flatlining at minus 30% EBITDA, and you pulled off this feat post that phase. So we'll unpack that in this episode. So really delighted to have you with us.
Thank you, Ari, for having me here. So first of all, I want to give a shout out to the entire team, at Epigamia, because everyone pulled in. Of course, after the passing of Rohan as well, I think everyone pulled in. It's been a fantastic turnaround story in that sense. So yeah, glad to be here. Looking forward to a very fruitful conversation.
No, super. I'm sure there are a lot of lessons, useful lessons for founders here. Let's start with, the performance that I just spoke about. Could you distill the top 3 strategic decisions, focus areas that enable this performance?
So I think the biggest change for us was the mindset. So I still remember around 2020, 2021, when we consciously took a call that bottom line cannot be ignored anymore. And we, like many other brands, fell into the trap of feeling it's either top line or bottom line. So I think we consciously realized that they can go hand in hand. So the biggest change for us operationally was making sure that every department head had a strategic project on some of the other P&L line item. So every department head knew their role to manage the P&L of the company. So P&L did not remain just a finance afterthought. It became an everyday operating metric, and every department head and their teams knew how can they move the needle on the P&L. So that was the biggest change, wherein we made sure that P&L was owned by everyone in the company and not just the financial controller or the business controller. The second was a lot more focus. I think for a couple of years, we sort of sprayed a bit too much because we did enjoy a lot of brand equity as we do today as well. But what we realized that doing a lot of Me Too products isn't doing any justice to the brand. So we narrowed down our focus and identified where we had the right to win and where we had the right to win and become really strong. So that was the second thing. And another thing we realized was that distribution doesn't equate to demand, right? There is an urge and natural tendency for a lot of offline brands to keep on expanding their distribution. But I think for a product like ours, where it's perishable, it's premium, it's a lot pull-based than push-based. So we realized this distribution can amplify demand, but it cannot create demand. So the demand has to be there before you expand massively offline. So I think those 3 were the broad sort of things we realized and of course changed over the last 3-4 years.
Got it. And you spoke about how initially, the focus was more on growth and brand as opposed to the bottom line.
Right.
And then, you eventually got into this mode. Now, that is a big change management exercise in itself. So can you just help founders with how you pull that off, got the entire team to buy into this new focus on
Yeah.
bottom line being as important as growth?
So, like a lot of brands, we also learned these things the hard way after making a fair few mistakes. But as I said, operationally, giving visibility to the entire, leadership and their teams of on how, as a company, we have to be much more mature on how we operate. Making sure that everyone understands that growth line, top line, and bottom line are not mutually exclusive; they can go hand in hand. So I'll give you a small example. We always thought of sales as primary or secondary, but what we realized and what we made sure that our sales do not end till we get the collections in, right? So the sales team did not just own the top line; they also had a collections target, which they do even today. So just like any company would plan on a weekly basis their top line and their sales performance, we actually track a target on collections also, and we ensure that the biggest KPI for the sales team is not just the sale revenue, it's the collections as well. Similarly, we became a lot more conscious on how every rupee is spent. So the idea is not to cut down on expenses or budgets. The idea is that every rupee spent should have some aligned outcome, whether it's short term or long term, but there is an expected outcome for every rupee that we spend. So these are the small changes that we sort of imbibed within the culture of the company as a unit. And these small changes sort of gradually helped us, turn around from where we were, let's say 4 years back to where we are today.
Okay. And I just want to double click on, the distribution point you made earlier that, distribution should follow demand as opposed to the other way around. Can you just double click on that on what do you exactly mean by that?
So I'll give you a specific example of how it transpired for us. So we are a 24-day shelf life product.
Yeah.
Let's say I want to go to a town beyond the top metros in India, let's say in Punjab, right? I would initially start with 15 to 20 GT stores.
Right.
The drop sizes for the GT stores will be very small in the first 2 months. Now, for me to convince a distributor to do those small drops is very tough because it will never be economically viable, for the distributor for the initial 2 to 3 months. However, our mandate has always been that we need to cover every store twice a week, right? So when we cover the stores with small amount of drops, and now I can do a campaign offline. I can probably do a print ad, and I'm talking about pre-quick commerce days. So the awareness to trial journey is about 1.5 to 2 months for a consumer. Now, for those 1.5 to 2 months, I will have to keep replenishing the stock even if it doesn't get sold, which gives us a lot of returns and expiry, which you're well aware of the high expiries and returns that we have. So this is what I'm talking about, that just because I'm available in a store will not lead to actual offtakes. I have to first create the demand in that city, for example, for the consumer to be aware of that Epigamia, yes, is now available in your city. It's available in these stores. So that demand has to be generated well before we start actually placing the product. Although the traditional thought, and this is what we also used to believe in the beginning, is that you're creating demand, but you're not available. So it's a waste of an exercise. But what we've realized is there has to be some inherent demand before we actually start getting into the stores, the physical offline stores.
Okay. I covered the financial metrics before, but the interesting fact is even today at this scale, Greek yogurt continues to be the majority share of our revenues.
Right.
And when I talk about that to people, they're always surprised that, can Greek yogurt be so big and still growing so fast? So, in your journey, I'm sure you've had moments of doubt on how large Greek yogurt can be in the market. And, and I know a lot of founders that are building products in category creating place, right? Similar to Greek yogurt. And the constant question that they are, asked by investors and sometimes they themselves are pondering over is how big can this become? So would be useful to understand how your thought process has been over the years and how did you get comfort that Greek yogurt can actually be a massive, massive market?
Yeah. So one of the toughest questions for me to answer is what's the TAM of Greek yogurt? And of course, we've been asked that over the last 10 years. I still cannot answer that today, but I'll give you some context. Some may define the TAM as breakfast. So let's say replacing your parantha with the yogurt and a muesli combination. Some may define it as a hunger fill between breakfast and lunch and dinner. Some may define it as a post dinner dessert. For us, we have never talked as a company, as a brand, we have never talked about when to consume Greek yogurt. Just sort of let the consumer and us explore it together. So for me, for us, TAM is not a number to be put on a spreadsheet. It's how many consumption occasions can your product actually cater to. So if I were to talk about TAM, a Greek yogurt is a breakfast item as well. It's a hunger fill also. It's a dessert also for many people. So the TAM is pretty wide in that sense. And of course, we had our doubts. Anyone who's saying they didn't have doubts when creating a category is lying.
Yeah.
So of course, we had our doubts. But I think we let the product be explored by consumers for different consumption occasions. And as the awareness for Greek yogurt increased, I think the use cases increased and the time increased. Sort of one example from the early days, which was an eye opener for us, when we had just started out, we realized a lot of chefs are using the plain Greek yogurt for marinating, which we hadn't thought would be one of the use cases.
Right.
But again, if we had restricted ourselves to defining a TAM from what we knew back then, I think it would not have seen the journey the product has seen today. So I think the idea is how many consumption occasions can the product cater to? And of course, as awareness increases, consumers will figure out more ways to use the product if they believe in the product from a taste and nutrition perspective. Eventually, people do explore and figure out new consumption occasions. And as a brand, we just need to ensure that we are consistent enough in our taste, in our quality, that we are able to cater to those consumption occasions as and when they arrive and evolve.
No, I think the focus on consumption occasions is interesting, especially for a completely new category product. If one can think on first principles and wrap your head around the consumption occasion you're going after, that could be a great proxy to size the market. But what would your advice be for founders beyond, obviously looking at consumption occasions? How else can what are like the early signs that the market could become big for founders, in category creating brands?
So I think a lot of people naturally tend towards defining how big the category is becoming by the number of touch points they're catering to. I don't think that's the right way to look at it. The touch points could be 100, could be 1,000. I think what's more important are the repeat of text coming in. So if you're talking offline, for example, are the retailers asking for your product? How quickly are you turning the shelves? Again, it could be 100 stores or 1,000 stores, I think. But for me, the more important metric is at a store level, how quickly the inventory is churning, and is the retailer asking for the product again and again or not? So once you have built, so for me, distribution is not PMF. Repeat purchase and repeat offtake is the actual PMF. So once you have established that, then yes, the product is being liked by the consumer. There is, again, I go back to it, there is demand for your product instead of you just distributing it, over XYZ stores. And once you've established that, then yes, then I think you can go in for a bit of expansion. And as I said, from our journey, discover new consumption occasions for the product, right? Because I don't think consumers consume categories; they consume consumption occasions,
right?
So I think, and honestly, any product will have a few consumption occasions beyond the one maybe the brand is targeting on or speaking more about. But there are other consumption occasions which, as a brand and product, the company should explore.
Got it. And and how do you think about launching new categories? Especially for a brand that's as sharply positioned as how do you think about launching categories without diluting the brand equity?
So again, it's been a long journey, and sort of there have been failures to sort of arrive at the playbook that we have now. So the playbook for innovation is very simple. So for Greek yogurt, it was a new category creation. Let's say for our recently launched high protein range, the milkshake and the yogurt, it wasn't so much category creation, but it was about elevating a category. So for us, it's very important. Whenever Epigamia enters a new category, are we able to elevate the category? Now, how do we elevate a category? It could be taste, it could be nutrition, it could be more functional. But again, amongst all these three options, there's a very constant underlying statement of that it has to be tasty.
Right.
At the end of the day, we are a food company. So yes, we can bring a lot of functional benefits to a category, to a product, but inherently it has to be tasty. The consumer, beyond just the functional aspects, should look forward to consuming the product. So I think that's very important. And that's sort of the playbook that we have today, which was very much validated by the launch of the turbo range, that you elevate a category with either more protein, with the cleaner ingredients,
Right.
but yet it has to be tasty at the end.
Got it. And the flip side to our success in Greek yogurt is there's been a lot of competition, especially when it was established that the demand is going to be big. And you've always been the highest priced product in the market, much more higher than global giants like Nestle's and local competition. So how did you think about tackling those phases, especially when competition like lowered price and went really aggressive?
So again, see, there will always be pressure on pricing when you're the most premium product out there, as much internally as externally. But I think from a brand point of view, our idea has always been to stay very consistent in what we deliver to the consumer and sort of the brand promise that we have. There is a reason for us to be premium because the quality of ingredients is such. We are not being premium just for the sake of it. The product sort of justifies that price. And again, there is a notion that India is price conscious. I firmly believe India is value conscious. I don't think there is a dearth of consumers willing to pay premium for a product, but they should see the value of why are they paying the premium for that product. Even for us and a lot of brands, as you are aware, the growth in the last couple of years has come in the premium segment. So I think there is no dearth of people having the ability to. Can you as a brand give them the value that they would be needing to pay that premium? I think is very important. So for us, yes, to your question, pressure has been there, but we are very strong belief on the product that we deliver, and we believe that the price is obviously absolutely justified given the quality of product that we and the experience that we are delivering to the consumers.
So even when the competition went aggressive with lower prices, buy one get one, etc., we decided to hold price.
Absolutely, and I'll go back to what I said earlier. Discounting can give you short-term push-based demand, but if the product isn't as good, again, could be nutrition, could be taste, it will eventually die down. It's not as if for some of the Me Too categories that we have done in the past, we have also done discounting in those categories, not for Greek yogurt. And we realized, discounting works for a short term, but it's not a long-term sustainable playbook. Ultimately, the product should be able to command the price and should be able to deliver that trust to the consumer.
And, I think in Greek yogurt, we also had the advantage of a proprietary product formulation, and we literally created the category.
Right.
But if I think about newer launches like the protein shake, which has done really well, I know that you have the maximum market share on QCOM, and that's another category that's seen a lot of competition. So what would you attribute, our ability to own this kind of market share to? Is it, because the product, I don't know if the milkshake is as differentiated and superior as the Greek yogurt is.
So I would say it's definitely as differentiated and superior, but it's not as if we started the category. So I think that's the difference between our Greek yogurt and the turbo milkshake. But just like for our Greek yogurt, even for turbo milkshake, I think the biggest. So we had to why we had the right to win in this category, right? And for us, as I said, it's a very simple, consistent playbook now. Are we able to elevate the category? So for turbo milkshake, we elevated the category with a cleaner protein drink with one of the best sources of protein that you can get, because you're not adding any way essentially to fortify it. It's coming from the process itself. And as I said, we are a food company. We are not a supplement company. So for us, the idea was very simple. I am not launching this product just for someone who's consuming a whey protein powder. We are launching it for anyone who consumes a milkshake. So for anyone who's consuming a milkshake, can we give them added functional benefit? So it's not, we don't market the product as only for pre or post workout. It could be someone wanting an evening refreshment who anyways consumes a milkshake, but now they can consume an equally tasty milkshake with the added benefit of it being clean and with protein, right? Again, when we talk about TAM, even for the protein milkshake, even elderly people are the TAM, right? Because they do enjoy a milkshake. Now they're getting a cleaner milkshake without compromising on taste. So I think the idea was it's a food, not supplement. So make it tasty, of course, but elevate the category as a whole. In this case, while keeping the taste, but elevating the functional benefits.
Right. So you're saying the product, even here, you would attribute the dominant market share to the product differentiation.
Absolutely. Of course, the brand is in a much stronger position compared to 2015 when we launched Greek yogurt. QCOM is a big accelerator. So all those factors obviously come into the picture. But at the core of it, again, it's a lot about the brand and the product also.
Right. Yeah. And, that's a very exciting category. I think it can like really benefit from the protein wave that we're seeing. But just staying on new categories, it'll be useful to talk through some of the missteps also.
Yeah.
I remember the milkshake launch didn't go to plan. So, do you want to just talk through what were the mistakes and learnings from that?
Equally important to sort of talk about the mistakes.
Yeah, what we from those.
So our biggest mistake was that we launched a lot of Me Too products. We have launched the plain milk. We launched the plain paneer. We have the regular Tetra Pak milkshake. So I think the idea that because the brand is loved so much, anything and everything we put out in the market will sell was the mistake. Yes, the brand is loved because we have. But why is the brand loved? Because we have been consistent in what we deliver. With the Greek yogurt or the turbo range, it's healthier, better for you products while maintaining the taste. So how we turned it around, essentially we needed to understand, does Epigamia have a right to win in the category? Which is not the case in a plain milk or paneer, because I'm not elevating the category, I'm not bringing anything new. So I think that was the learning phase wherein we, of course, had to become more focused, but also realize that it's not as if we can launch any product. Whatever product we launch has to justify what the brand stands for. And then, yes, we have the right to win, but not for any Me Too product. And that's when we obviously scaled down on these products and sort of took the learning forward.
Sure. So just ensuring that the product is differentiated and it does elevate the category. Now, I want to switch to offline. And I still distinctly remember in our last Brick by Brick with Rohan, he said Epigamia was a brand born for the modern trade channel.
Yes.
Back when we started. So how do you see the role of offline going forward? Because today QCOM is our major channel when it comes to revenues. So how do you approach offline?
So modern trade back in the day made a lot of sense to start with because we had the right consumer profile. There were a lot of opportunities to sample the product. And even today, we are very big on sampling.
Right.
We can have the best brand communication. We have the most beautiful packaging. We can have all the right notions around the brand. But ultimately, a food product has to be experienced, has to be tasted, for it to be loved by the consumer. So we were very big on sampling initially, and modern trade provided the perfect platform to do live tasting and get that live feedback from consumers. So we do that even today. Of course, today Q-commerce is a big accelerator and has really opened up the accessibility of the product across India. But just going back to the value that we hold as a company, it's a mandate that any and every city Epigamia operates in has to be both online and offline. We will not have any online city. And there is a reason behind that. While QCOM, of course, accelerates demand, accelerates the growth, offline as a channel does help in maintaining visibility, forming habit within the consumers, because yes, consumer behavior is shifting to online,
right?
But there's enough set of consumers who are shopping offline even today, right? So we as a company have a mandate that all the cities that we are in will have both offline and online, and both the channels serve the different purposes. One biggest for offline being ability to sample live and get live feedback through our fleet of promoters, but also have that mental availability in the offline stores.
Right. No, yeah. Offline will continue to play a critical part. Now, how would you advise like new age food brand founders, like all of them invariably start their journey in Q-commerce, and every channel, as you know, needs a lot of bandwidth and resources to crack. So what would your advice be on when should they start thinking about offline?
So again, the space we are in as an ecosystem, I think it's one of the best times to launch new products because what, let's say, we had to do for the first two years in 2015 can be done in 2 months.
Yeah.
So there absolutely no debating that Q-commerce gives the opportunity to launch, test, relearn, and scale faster. But I think it's again for a brand to be truly durable and dominant, it has to be both online and offline. However, offline is a very big, very different game compared to online. So you should only go offline when you know you have created demand. See, because trials can be bought, but
Right.
repeat cannot be bought, right? So once the brand understand that there is some inherent demand, you should start thinking offline. However, you should be very sure that the company as a whole can handle the operational complexity of offline, right? Managing shelf space, inventory, capital,
Yeah.
returns is a very different ball game in offline. So only when you're sure that the P&L and the company can operationally manage the hassles that come with offline, and there will be inefficiencies in the beginning that come with offline. So if you're sure you can manage that, then you should start venturing offline. And again, I would never advise anyone to go absolutely big and gung-ho right in the beginning in offline. Test out a city, test out maybe 3 cities, smaller set of stores, understand whether there's repeat offtake or not, understand whether the retailer is repeatedly asking for a product or not. Once you establish that, you expand, but be very sure that you as a company are able to handle the operational complexities of being offline.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fair. Offline is a slow game,
Yeah.
and it needs that patience in addition to the discipline you just spoke about. Now, when I think about it, two things that stand out. The first one is just the short shelf life. It's like a 24-day product. And, founders struggle with working capital with far longer shelf life products. And I know at some point we had like 20% expiry.
Yeah.
So it'll be useful to just, take the viewers through how you optimized inventory management and, getting to where you are in terms of profitability and yeah, for the viewers, Epigamia is a negative working capital business. So it'll be good to understand the practices you put in place.
So as I said, one thing that hasn't changed from day one to today is that every store has to be visited twice a week. The reason for that is, again, it's all part of the brand promise. We are a fresh dairy product. We want to be able to reach the consumers fastest from the production date. Therefore, we want to keep the freshest product on the shelf. Now, in trying to do that, we always pick up the stock from the retail stores if it's nearing expiry. So which of course adds on to the returns and leakages. But I think one thing we will learn that do not fall in love with your own forecast, because forecasts are always bullish, and you usually end up forecasting more than the actual demand. So there have been phases when we have expanded our offline distribution, but every time the same pattern repeats. So you go from 1x to 2x, you will stabilize somewhere at 1.5x, right? However, in this process, you have a lot of inefficiencies and wastages. So I think from a discipline point of view, operationally, the biggest learning is you may be the most optimist person in the world, but when it comes to planning, it has to be an actual numbers. The actual number is demand. It's for us, it's the pull from the market. And whatever the demand is, you plan your distribution around that and not just on the bullish number that you may have in your mind. Again, it's a learning curve, so which we have, of course, taken time to understand. Additionally, we have been very tech savvy from day one. So we do use a lot of tech to keep on optimizing our demand planning. We have a dedicated team in-house who does demand planning. And for us, it's an everyday affair because we are not a long shelf life product. We literally get produced and dispatched every day. So demand planning for us is a continuous exercise, continuous optimization. So our learning on catering to actual demand, in addition to how we get better at demand planning, is sort of resulting in incrementally improving our returns and wastages to where we are today. And of course, then you keep on improving the back and make it more flexible,
Right.
to be able to cater to the fluctuations in the demand.
No, great. Now I want to, I don't think any conversation on Epigamia is complete without talking about Rohan. And you were there with him right from day one. This was like an NRI kid with zero dairy background, starting off in India. So what made you say yes and be part of the journey?
So yeah, I mean, yes, NRI kid, probably with the zero dairy background, but I think I've never met a more optimist person in my life. I mean, he could make you believe in his vision and come along for the ride. So I think for me, when I sort of joined Drum, it was a lot to do with him, beyond anything else. And a shout out to Peter Asing also, who was his mentor, is my mentor, and he sort of connected me to Rohan. But yeah, I mean, it was the force of his personality, his vision, the conviction he had in his ideas, and to show you a future which did not exist at that time, but he was very clear on what he wanted to build and how he wanted to build it. And anyone who's fortunate enough to spend some time in Rohan will attest to that. So I think it was a lot how he was as a person and personality that, I mean, it did not take a lot of convincing, honestly, but yeah, that's what convinced me, to come along for the ride with him.
Okay. Okay. And, Rohan's no longer with us, but I still see his fingerprints everywhere in the company. How, just want to understand what role his influence plays in the biggest decisions, in business right now.
Yeah. So I think all the credit to Rohan on how he shaped and built Epic. The culture he implemented from day one, the kind of people and team he built, in the company. I think for me, whenever we are pondering over a tough decision, I think it's not so much what Rohan would do; it's the standard that he would expect. So I think one of the biggest things he left behind as a legacy is the standards that he set. So and I can speak personally on this. Whenever I'm in doubt, I go back to thinking, what would Rohan expect? What standard would he expect in this conversation? And that's a very, very good anchor that will stay with me for the rest of my life in sort of how I operate and how I go around taking decisions.
Right. No, that's interesting. Like setting the standard as high as it can be. And I know that, the secret dream or ambition for most founders is for the business to outlast them. And, knowing what you know, what would you attribute Rohan's staying power to? Right? Was it the way he hired? Was it just the force of personality? Or were there any rituals? You spoke about setting standards as high as it can be, but anything more?
So I'll tell you one thing he used to tell everyone who used to join Drums. There will not be a single day when you feel bored in this company. And I can attest to that has been the case. And hopefully we are able to keep hold of that value and make that the case, as long as Drums is there. So I think again, it's the value that he instilled on all of us that, spent any amount of time with him, and how he institutionalized values within the company, which then obviously then stand true to the test of time. And we hope to obviously continue taking them forward and ensuring that the culture of the company, no matter what top line or bottom line we are generating, the culture remains intact, and people of course feel like working for Epigamia and feel like working for something of their own, which has been the case thus far.
Yeah. I mean, not a single boring day is like anybody's dream. And coming from someone who spent 13 years, that's a, really high bar. But can you say more about how he institutionalized values? Are there any,
So I think from an operational point of view, one thing was very clear. We do not want yes men, in the company. I think the idea has always been, once your KPIs are aligned, you take ownership, right? And that is something I also very strongly resonate with. I think giving people the opportunity to lead and take ownership and accountability, there is no better way to to ensure that people within the company grow in their roles and can keep on elevating themselves. So again, as a culture, as a policy, it's about taking accountability and owning things within the company. At the end of the day, you should feel that connect with the brand, wherein then of course as a collective you want the brand to grow. And it's very important, what I feel and what I've realized is very important for people to understand how they move the needle within the company, right? A lot of times a person may be doing his or her job, but does not really understand how he or she moves the needle within the company. So I think we can give that visibility to people. I think they grow much faster and they evolve as people, as employees, as owners of the brand much better. And again, this philosophy, and I'll go back to what we were talking in the beginning, this philosophy also helped us when I talked about everyone co-owned the P&L. this was sort of the driving philosophy behind it, that let people have visibility to how they move the needle within the company, because there is no greater validation when you see the fruits of the effort that you are putting in. But sometimes I get that visibility gets lost in companies. So I think it's very important for people to have visibility to their contributions.
Yeah. No, that's very, very valid. So I want to wrap up with some reflections and maybe some advice for founders. I think the first thing that would be useful is, as we said, for the first maybe 8-9 years of the journey, the P&L looked like really bad. It was a fantastic brand and product, and then we went through the turnaround. So if you had to go back in time, what are 3 things that you would do differently to avoid that initial burn that we went through?
I think in hindsight, it's very easy for me to maybe not point out 10 things, but I think while not the best way to sort of manage capital, it's all part of the learning process. Who's to say that we would be at this position today if we hadn't learned from those mistakes? So I think mistakes are part and parcel of the process. Of course, you try and improve and ensure that mistakes don't happen, but I look back at those mistakes as sort of times we learned and grew. However, if we had to really sort of remove a few things from the journey, one would be doing Me Too products, because I think any product Epigamia puts on the shelf has to justify what the brand stands for, because there is a certain brand promise that the consumers expect. So yeah, we should only put out product that deliver that brand promise to the consumer. I think the second is being very focused, and it's very important to understand where you have the right to win. You can end up doing 10,000 things, while really maybe only 10 things will actually move the needle on the brand or the company. So I think staying focused on what actually moves the needle and choosing what not to do is equally important as compared to doing 10,000 things at once. So I think these would be the 2 things if I had to really sort of pick and change from the journey we've had.
Okay. And for founders starting out, if you had to highlight just 1-2 things that'll help them ensure a good bottom line as they start out, right? What would those be?
So I think the first thing is to not fall into the trap of thinking that growth and bottom line are mutually exclusive. I think they can happen hand in hand from day one. So when we are thinking of improving the bottom line, I think it's very easy to start figuring out where do I improve margins, wherein sometimes the actual problem lies in complexities that are eroding the margin. So as much as sort of, let's say, reducing cost, tightening the expenses to improve margins, it's equally important to understand, are there too many complexities in the operational framework of the company which are eroding margins? So I think a lot of it comes down to simplifying things. And that is something sort of I live by and I've experienced firsthand. Simplifying things, simplifying the operation of the company gives you a much clearer picture of wherein you can sort of protect and eventually improve margins. So I think the biggest advice would be keep the systems very simple, because if they're too complex in the beginning, you have no idea how complex they will be, when you scale. And complexity just compounds with scale. So I think keeping it simple, keeping it very lean in the beginning, and absolutely having the belief that top line and bottom line can go hand in hand.
Yeah. No, that mindset of looking at top line, bottom line working together is an important one. And final question, every consumer founder dreams of having brand love that App has. How did you pull that off? What would you recommend to founders?
I think it's just about staying consistent in sort of, firstly, the internal values that you hold as a brand. For us, it's always been healthier, better for you products. Very, very big on zero preservatives, clean ingredients, but that's all internal sort of values. But then when you project it outwards, are you delivering the same message consistently, repeatedly over time to consumers? And again, it's a case of doing 10,000 things versus doing 100 things, but consistently the same things. So I think any brand or brands that grow with time, one thing is common is they're very consistent on what they stand for and what they deliver to the consumers. Of course, there are doubts in that journey. You may want to pivot too soon, if you're not getting the scale that you would expect, let's say in the initial 1 or 2 years. But I think it's very important, because when you start a company or a brand, there is a certain conviction. I think it's very important to stay true to that conviction and believe in it and be very consistent. Eventually, if you're consistent enough, consumers will resonate with what you
Right.
stand for.
Yeah, no, consistency and messaging compounds like nothing else. Great, Ankur. This was a fantastic conversation. Thank you for your time, and look forward to the trajectory continuing for as long as we can.
Yeah, thank you, Ari, for having me here once again. I hope we're able to deliver some value to to the people who are listening in. But yeah, thank you once again, and look forward to bigger and much better things jointly for Epigamia.
Super. Thanks,
Thank you.
Ankur.